broadcasting live from the Roanoke Valley of southwestern Virginia. Join us and see what life looks like from a medium's perspective with Reverend Tracey Lockwood, the medium's medium. We'll explore the tools of psychic development, hear stories and experiences from the other side, and learn to listen to our natural intuition. Now, our host, Reverend Tracey Lockwood.
Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. Before we get started at today's show, I wanted to let you know that besides doing private readings one-on-one, either by phone or Skype or in person in my office here in Roanoke, Virginia, that I offer one-on-one private tutoring. And I do that via Zoom. It's like a private classroom between you and me. And I offer group training as well. I have a 12-week psychic mediumship training and certification program that is appropriate for all levels of practice. The certifications at the end of the 12-week course are awarded according to your level of function there. And it's really awesome for people of all levels to work with others that are either more or less advanced in their studies, because spirit is amazing and there are all kinds of interesting things that happen. And so if you're interested in deepening and intensifying your psychic mediumship skills and wanting to make sure that you've had a comprehensive exposure to the concepts, ethics, business development tips, et cetera, that you would need in order to start a business of working in psychic mediumship or intuitive arts, please feel free to visit my website at mediumtracylockwood.com. I offer partial scholarships according to income, so do not be afraid to touch in with me and ask about that. So today we're having back on our show someone who's very special to me. She's just an amazing energy. She is an author of ghost stories, and she's written a book called Make Believe, which talks about the boogeyman, and it's a book written for parents and children. She has a YouTube channel that you can see these things on, and she's highly acclaimed. Her stories have been, and she herself has been written about in articles and magazines frequently, and she just won a first prize in a ghost storytelling contest with the Ghostly Chronicles. She pulled up with first place there. She's a paranormal investigator, and I'm going to leave it as a ... as in so much more, and introduce and welcome back to the show Gaylen Chauncey. Welcome back, Gaylen.
Oh, thank you, Tracey. It's a pleasure to be here again.
You are more than welcome. You've been with us a couple of times talking about beings and some of your experiences in paranormal investigation. And today we're going to be talking about dimensional shifts. But before we get into that curious topic, I wanted you to give our listeners an example of what I mean when I said ... and so much more than just a paranormal investigator.
Well, a paranormal investigator basically means that somebody who just investigates the paranormal, okay, goes to a haunted location to try to get evidence, just basic stuff, okay? But as for me, I help people that have paranormal experiences with a spirit that is not nice, okay? Because most people who have experiences with nice spirits, they're fine that they're living with them. Okay.
Right.
But there are some spirits out there that are really, for the best term to use, are evil, and they're scaring the family. Okay. So my job is to go there not only to gather evidence, because evidence helps me with the case. Okay. They're like clues. Okay. I have an example of that 6 months ago. I had to help this family out, and their 3-year-old boy was scared to death by what he called the bad guy. Okay? And so when I went there and used my recording equipment, I realized the spirits were leaving electronic voice phenomena, words, and they were actually calling it the bad guy.
Oh,
so it made sense for
interesting.
the 3-year-old little. That's where he got the name from. Okay, it wasn't something he thought of himself.
Yeah, he was
Well,
picking it up psychically, absolutely.
Exactly, because there were good spirits in the house, too. I was quite surprised that this one location had so many spirits there. And dealing with something that is an evil spirit, okay, most paranormal investigators think they're dealing with something that's evil, and they really don't know what evil is. Okay,
Yes.
This thing was truly evil. Okay, and what I had to do was I do not push something out of a house to land at another house to another unsuspecting family. It's just not right.
Right, exactly.
So they had a cemetery in their front yard, and I trapped the spirit in the cemetery. Now, all was well until a couple of days ago. I was contacted back, and they were all out for dinner for the evening, and the police called saying their house alarm had gone off. So they came there, and nobody broke in, but the back door was open. So they have a video camera and an alarm, and they looked at the video camera, and the door has swung open so hard it hit the wall and bounced back. Okay, and this is a deadbolt lock. And they could smell fresh dirt and grass in the house. Okay.
Whoa.
Well, that's telling me that it had escaped out of the cemetery and got back inside the house. So I'm going to have to go back and try to get rid of it a second time. And that happens. Where the first time it worked, but it was only a temporary fix. The second time it comes back. And there is real evil out there. And instead of being scared, my faith in the light enables me to fight for the ones who can't.
Yes.
They don't know how to deal with it. They're just scared to death. So I'm researching on what I can do a second time to make sure that he doesn't get back inside the house or escapes.
Yes, and you are most definitely a warrior woman of the light. Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes when we tango with a dark spirit, I know it's not what people probably imagine. Some people imagine sort of the garlic and the commanding demons and that kind of thing, but it's more of a process of learning about what's going on, right? And
exactly.
Yeah.
And my job is try to help them. I really, even if it's evil, I try to get them to quote unquote see the light.
Yes.
But some of them will refuse to do that, and they live off fear. It's like a addict. Looking for that next high, and that is what these spirits are like. So scaring people is their high.
Yes.
They get the energy from it, and they won't stop, because it's working.
Yeah, I, as a medium, think that there's a purpose to them using fear. Fear and lust are the two tools that dark energies can use, and there are lots of different expressions of that. Fear can turn into anger, and lust can be greed or whatever, but basically fear and lust. And I think that they are, in our physical body, we forget that we have a will that is supreme, that is inviolable. Because in our physical body, we have so many things happen that are beyond our control. So it ends up that we forget our higher being that we are. But those that are out of body are fully aware of that. And I kind of think of it like the ruby slippers, with Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch was like trying to touch the slippers and it was shocking her. And then she had to figure out a way to make Dorothy want to give her the slippers. So she used fear of monkeys and all kinds of threats to her family and stuff to get her to relinquish the slippers and the ruby shoes.
And it works.
And that's what I think that's kind of an analogy, don't you, of what goes on in the spirit world. So you'll figure that out because They
I will.
wouldn't have called you in the first place if you weren't capable of doing that. I know that.
And it worked. Like I said, it unfortunately was just temporary, but it's not the first time that something has come back and I had to take care of it a second time.
Yeah, And sometimes I think it's the family that invites it back too, because sometimes people are sort of mesmerized by the fact that they have a dark spirit. So there's kind of an attachment that they have to the spirit rather than vice versa. And so
it makes me frustrated when sometimes they don't do exactly what I tell them to do.
Right,
okay, and I said, because you didn't. You did the opposite. This is why the problem is happening again. I'm trying to fix it, but you're not cooperating with me, and you're keep inviting it back in, and I can't keep running it off, and you keep inviting it back in. So that does happen.
Yes, because it's very important where we focus our attention. Energy follows focus. So if we go back into thought patterns or behaviors or don't adhere to refocusing our energy, then it, of course, will open the door to have things return right back the way they were, too. Not like you did anything wrong. And the responsibility is on the people that live in the house.
It took the crystals in the house.
Yes.
Yeah, it took the crystals in the house and hid them.
Oh, wonderful.
It actually did that. Yeah, so it actually removed the crystals, and we found them hidden. So it was just by pure accident that we found the crystals. And I went, well, that thing took the crystals and moved them out of the house.
Yeah.
And the children didn't even know where they were.
Right.
So
Yeah. Before we go further, I want to give people your website in case they want to check you out while we're talking. It's afterlifegoeson.com.
Yes.
afterlifegoeson.com. So you can find Gaylen Chauncey there. So Gaylen, we were, tussling about, thinking about what kind of topic, because you and I could probably talk for like decades. And, and you had brought up the idea of dimensional slips, dimensional slips. What are they? Why do you call them that? Get us started with the concept on dimensional slips.
Okay, well, over the years, investigating many of the places, and it doesn't have to be a house. They're everywhere. I was encountering, I can tell a spirit, okay? I can see it, okay? They communicate through my voice recorders. They always have, okay? And they produce an energy that I can feel. Right?
Yes.
But sometimes I would come across things that produced an energy like a living thing. Animals, human produce a living energy.
Yes.
Okay? And I would come across things that, at first, oh, it's a spirit, and then I realized that, well, no, it isn't. This is not a spirit. What am I looking at? Okay. And over the years, I have seen, and I call them dimensional slips because at the time I didn't know what else to call them. Okay.
Yeah.
That these unidentified creatures were coming through, and I have witnessed one with my own eyes. And it's just by accident. It wasn't like I went looking for them. Okay. It was just truly by accident. And what I think they are is, whether it's accidental or made, like a doorway, that these are slips between our world and another world. Okay?
Yeah.
Because they're not, most of them are not human that I come across, but I can tell something that's alive compared to something that truly is a spirit. So it was by accident, me researching and finding out about it.
When I was at Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Science in England, they were talking about the fact that the veil between the two worlds was thinnest in that general area there. And not maybe at the college itself, perhaps, but, in that area. And I just found that so fascinating to think about the spirit realm coming through. But of course, there are many layers and many, many dimensions beyond just those that have cross over.
So I had to believe that because I witnessed it. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your first experience? Tell us your first experience with that. Like, what you can
my first experience was a dimensional. Well, my real first experience on seeing it and it clicking that it was definitely was a lighthouse beam. Okay, and it came out from the floor, and it was just like a lighthouse beam. All right, went straight up into the ceiling. If there was something in its way, it didn't bounce light back. It just went right through it. Okay, wow. And to see things come out of it and then jump right back into it, and then it would just like turn off like it wasn't there. Okay,
well,
that was actually the real.
How old were you, or were you a child or a teen or adult?
I was probably about 20, around 20 years old when I saw that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's, I seen things that weren't supposed to be there that just took a step back into nothing.
Yes.
There was no light. There was no, I put my hands, I would feel it, and going, this is impossible. It just, can't disappear. I'm used to a spirit disappearing, but this was actually taking a step back. I scared one to death one time.
Oh,
that was the situation.
They don't expect you to see them. Yes.
No. And the only reason I knew it was there and it was real was when I stood up, it scooted its feet back so fast like a dog, it was sliding on the wood floor.
Wow.
I started it that much, and it pushed itself back into nothing.
What did that one look
ghosts
like?
don't do that.
What did that one look like? What did that one look like?
Those right there, I think that in most cases, it's because of my ability to see spirits that I'm able to see them, but most of them really are just solid black. It's like I can't see the color of them. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do I see a color of something where I can actually, put out details because you can see the color, but their eyes glow white. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I'm talking glowing white, not, a reflection of light like a cat. I'm talking about glowing white.
Yes.
And one had wings, like a bat, it's just, but the funny part is most of them are just as curious of me as I am of them.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
With spirits, I'm used to some aggression because most spirits, just don't want to be here, and I, get some kind of aggression from them. But these things are never any of aggression. Actually, a couple of them that I have seen were surprised I could see them, and they would just jump away. And they were gone.
I can kind of relate. I've had two experiences seeing two different angels, Michael and Metatron, and both of them seemed slightly startled that I could actually see them. Mm-hmm. Michael was working. I was doing a reading, and I looked down. I just didn't expect to see down, but I didn't realize my vibration when I read is so higher. So I was looking down into the earth plane because I had sort of left my body while I'm reading, I guess, in a weird way. And I looked down, and he was warring in this sort of well or this pit of darkness, and looked up, and we looked at each other like, whoa, like, like I didn't expect to see him. And the same happened with Metatron, because when I saw him, he was so tall and he was such a great being of light. But as I looked deeper, I was like mesmerized by his garments, because they were like 3 inches of light woven around his body, like a robe kind of thing. And I looked into his face, and I was able to see that he was black ethnically. And he was startled that he told me not many people see that aspect, because they kind of stop when they see the light. So you must have a particular gift as well to perceive beyond the beyond there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's just some kind of an ability. But a lot of times I can't see them clearly, but I can see them.
Yeah. Would you...
They are surprised.
Are you, or I was just going to say, are you aware of places that are maybe this is like sort of like I, heard about the veil being thinnest around Arthur Findlay. Are there places that other people have experienced this?
Yes. I think, with, the one of the biggest ones would have to be, and I am from Mount Shasta, California.
Oh.
Okay. So it is, this place is like a revolving door into different dimensions. It is.
Whoa.
Okay. There, you just don't, the experience, growing up in the area, I heard the stories and had weird experiences myself. My family loved to hike, and we go hiking into areas, and the best description I can use was the frequency was off. Okay. What I mean is you're just hiking along when you feel it. It's the hairs on your arms standing straight up because of the electricity in the air.
Wow.
Okay. And then here's what sounds like a radio squelch, as if somebody's trying to tune in a radio station.
Yeah. Oh, I understand that. Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
I've never been in one of those areas, but that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a weird energy there. Okay. And, it's so many people disappear from the area. I think that a lot of them are accidentally walking into one of these areas that, it's thin, the veil is thin at that moment, and at time energy is just right. We were taught to get away from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we heard it, my mom and dad were like, we're walking this way, so it would fade. We would never go toward it.
So if you heard that kind of tuning pitch or that frequency shift.
Exactly.
If you moved,
and that's what it was.
And if you moved
and it was
away,
electricity.
Left or?
Yeah, we moved away. Yeah, my parents are very persistent about not going toward it, because you could get closer to it, but you can feel it. I mean, and not just hear it, but you could feel it. And it was something that we're not going anywhere near it. We're going the opposite way, so we don't hear it anymore. So my parents were always very insistent about getting away from it. And, a lot of people disappear up there. A lot of people, and it has a draw. It's a lot of psychics go up there because they feel drawn to the place.
To Mount
right?
Shasta.
And as we were talking about, is the psychics are drawn to areas, where the frequency is higher. Okay. I think that it's a lot of it. I believe that most of it's accidental. Okay. I think people just walk into it by accident. Okay. Now, when you walk from here and you walk into another dimension, you're lost immediately.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're upside. You're like in an airplane in a storm. You don't know, your instruments are not working, so you don't know if you're flying sideways, upside down. Okay, it's that situation, and people accidentally, instead of taking that step back to come back into our dimension, accidentally take a step forward. Okay, and the further you get away, you don't know how to turn around because your compass is off. You're not in the earth that you have, north, east, south, and west. Okay. You're someplace else where that's totally in a different direction. And I think they just don't know how to step back. And by the time, they might have been able to, the doorway has closed again.
That's very interesting. Brings up to mind some of the things you find in the Bible. Was it Moses that was taken and no one could find his bones? The discussion about the rapture, people rising and not, leaving the rest of us behind, kind of thing or whatever. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. And because we do exist on so many multiple levels, referring back to the reading that I was talking about where I was out of the earth plane, I've often wondered, like the two dimensions, like our out of body experience and us are really only separated by a half breath. Like when we're born, we inhale, and when we pass, we exhale. So really it's kind of, and there's some people that believe that truth exists between the breaths too. So it's very interesting to think about places that would be particularly dense in this type of phenomenon.
Yeah. I was back home about 3 years ago and went up to the top of Mount Shasta. I'd spent a couple of hours there, and I was looking into this crystal shop with my sisters, and they had a new rock, that was turned into glass. It was something new on top from Mount Shasta.
Oh, wow.
And the guy was saying, hey, we have these for sale. And there were several pieces of them in a box, and I'm sitting here going, well, if it's hard enough to turn stone into glass, I would be a tad worried.
Right.
So, all of the sisters, this was going through my mind. I mean, it just showed up a couple of years ago. So, my sister's like, oh, let's all pick one. It's something new. We'll remember us. So we all picked one and gave them to the gentleman to ring up. And the gentleman laughed, and he was like, you know what this is? And he looked at me because we all picked out different sizes. I just went and picked out one that was a quarter size. Okay, I did. There's like 30 of them in there.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know what this is? And I said, no. And he goes, it's a dragon's head. So he showed it to me, and I looked at it, and I laughed. I said, well, it is a dragon's head. And he said, there's a legend here that there is a dragon that's on top of Mount Shasta, and it's fiery, its fiery breath is what's turning the rock into glass. And he looked at me real strange, and you understand me, they're just really close knit there. He goes, we realize that only psychics pick out dragon heads.
Oh,
and he looked at me, and that's what he said. My sisters didn't pick one out, but that was so funny. And that's what he said to me, and I went, well, I can, and I said, yeah, I can believe that. So you go up there, and it's really weird how all of a sudden you just do something innocent like that, and then they pinpoint you by what you pick out by going, only psychics pick out what you pick out.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going home in December, so I'm going to go back up there and visit. And I feel the draw. I know what they're talking about. It's an energy, but my radar is a little bit different than everybody else's. I use it as a defense more than anything else. So I know that something's off. So when the something is off, my warning bells are, telling me something's wrong.
Right on. Right.
So, but a few years ago, a medium did a reading on me. And she said, and this is, she was from Mount Shasta, and she was doing a reading over the phone for me. And it's a birthday present from my sister. And she was calling me a Lemurian. Okay, and that's,
I've heard of Lemuria, and I know some generalities about it, but I'll let you share on that. Tell us a little bit about Lemuria and what you mean by a Lemurian.
Okay, well, it's really, all the places around the world that might have, there's not many stories except for what's passed down. So this is one of the stories that actually somebody was able to write about after the fact. Okay. There was in 1883, there was a teenager, Frederick Oliver, was a regular teenager, okay, working on his farm, and for the first time in his life, he started doing automatic writing spells, and he just started writing, and it scared him to death, okay, because he never had somebody take over his hand, and write, okay, and that's basically what that is. And what it is, he told a story about the Lemurians. Okay. Apparently, how the story goes is there was a huge landmass called Mu. Okay. And its occupants were an ancient race called Lemurians. Atlantis is also speculated to be once inhabited by them. Okay. A massive catalysm around 12,000 years ago caused them to sink. All right, and there's proof all over the world that a flood did occur around this time, 12,000 years ago.
Yes.
But according to his writings, the survivors built a crystal city underneath Mount Shasta called Tellus. All right, and it was to create a safe haven for themselves, their sacred records, teachings, and technologies. All right. Now there was proof all over the volcano, from the Sphinx rock to unknown petroglyphs inscriptions that cannot be identified, as well as ancient ruins that no one knows who built. All right. And what is a lot of campers and hikers, they'll be up there in the middle of nowhere hiking around, and they encounter people that stand out, not because they're taller than most men, but they're wearing hooded robes and have a protrusion in the center of their very high foreheads. Okay? And if they're approached, they would vanish into thin air. Right?
Oh,
now, in the late 1800s through the 1950s, these same people would come into town a few times a year to purchase large amounts of sulfur and salt. And they always overpaid with large gold nuggets. And I can't imagine what would they want these supplies for? They didn't speak English or any language locals understood, but were kind, with their interactions with the shopkeepers. Now, it's been many years since there's been a real sighting from one of these
You said that was in the 1800s, late 1800s? Yeah.
Exactly. So, and hopefully one day, with today's smartphones and cameras everywhere and drones, we might get lucky one day and actually get proof they really do exist. And the local American tribes in the area have a great respect for the place and consider it sacred. Now, this is where it gets kind of weird. They have too many legends about the beings that live there. Some say they're spiritual creators. Others say it's a race of reptile people. While others say it's a race of dwarfs. The list just goes on.
A lot of speculation. Yeah. Oh, that's
exactly. All of them different tribes believe that different type of race live there. And
maybe more than one does.
Exactly. And this kid was just a teenager. Never even. It's kind of hard to come up with a story like that. In 1883, there wasn't a lot of science fiction and fantasy out there, especially when you lived in the middle of nowhere. So I do kind of believe. And once he wrote about them, that was it. He had no more spells, no more.
No more
that was
episodes.
all that he wrote.
Yeah, no more.
No more episodes.
Yeah.
So it really did scare him, but that's how. That is one of the reasons why Mount Shasta has that legend, is because actually somebody was there to tell the story.
Oh, that's interesting. I had been given a book called Telos or whatever, and never really read it, but now I will. Anyway, and you said that occurred through the 1950s and then not so much after that.
Yeah, exactly. People so far right today, they claim they see one come in town every once in a while. But I don't think that's true. It really was the last true sightings were really by people said they really did see him was in the 1950s. Now, like I said, the occasional person, the camper and hiker do run into them. And they do see them.
Is that right? The Lemurians?
Lemurians. And they got, like I said, it's just this, very high foreheads, blonde. Who knows who they are? Like I said, they got the small protrusion in the middle of their forehead.
Yeah.
That is part of their body. It's not a piece of jewelry that's put there. Okay. Yeah. So there is something unusual about it.
That their skull is constructed. Yeah.
So it's just kind of, it's a story, but everybody knows about it who lives there.
Yeah. That got me thinking too about other places where people sort of AKA disappear, and we all know that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed we can be transformed, but we can't we can't just not be here. So the thing that popped in my mind was the Bermuda Triangle, where entire ships and stuff. Do you know a bit about that? Tell us something about Bermuda Triangle.
The Bermuda Triangle is probably, like I said, is the most world-known place. I think it's a combination of natural and created slips. Okay. Now, Edgar Casey did say in one of his readings.
You said natural and created slips? What do you mean by
I think
that?
I think that, Edgar Casey in one of his readings said Atlantis would be found off the waters of Bimini, which is near the Bahamas, which is in the Bermuda Triangle. Okay. And I do believe that, even the Hopi Indians, I believe that they all knew of other dimensions. Okay. Some people, have the ability to create these dimensions. And I think that sometimes that it's an accidental slip. These ships are disappearing, and I mean, people witness them disappearing in front of their eyes. They go into a strange cloud or a fog, and then they're just gone.
Yes.
I mean, just gone. Planes just disappearing. Their ships are found with the entire crew gone.
Wow.
Okay, and nothing looks like anything happened to the ship. Ship's in great condition. There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of these ships are, and the reason why I think that some of them are, it's not like the most safest place I would go to, and I've been there a couple of times, but there are incidents where they would find a ship, the crew is gone. Nothing's wrong with the ship. So they'll put a skeleton crew on the ship, and they'll start towing the ship. Okay? Next thing you know, the ship's engulfed in a fog. They lose the rope connecting to the ship. The fog lifts. They find the ship way over there. They go to it. The crew's gone.
Wow.
Okay, and you're talking maybe an hour has gone by. No distress signal, nothing. They would actually get a second crew to get on the ship. I don't know how they convinced these guys to do that, but they would get on there, and the same thing would happen. So it would scare them enough to where they would just let the ship go. They wouldn't get, they lost half their crew.
Yeah.
In a matter of a couple of hours.
That's so wild.
I think that something's taken them. Yeah.
I was doing a reading for someone, and it was an unusual one for me as a novice reader to do. A woman came to me from a nearby city and said that aliens were trying to take her child. And, I at the time didn't even know anything about that or have any concept other than, oh, that's creepy in my regular brain. But during the reading, it was very interesting. Her guides brought out that she had Native American heritage, and I asked her, and she confirmed that. And so we went back in her ancestry, and apparently, 10,000 years ago or so, there had been a tribe, a Native American tribe, who had been, they were dying off, and there were some star people that had come to give them their seed and to help them become more diverse so that they could thrive as a people. And the shaman that had opened the portal to call in assistance, I guess, from other places, other dimensions, had forgotten to completely close the portal. So 10,000 years had passed, and those beings lived much longer than we did. I'd say, from what I feel like, they could have lived from 3,000 to 7,000 years or themselves, like as an individual. And so they were trying to come back because their culture had come into a crisis, and they now needed the diversity that they had once given. And so in their mind, and it was so weird tapping into them, they were these tall, kind of wafty looking people. I don't know how to describe it, like not the type of limbs, and I mean, they had limbs, but kind of tall people, and beings of light, big eyes, and the thing was that they didn't understand how many generations had passed, and they didn't differentiate the fact that her daughter was different than her, and that she was not even the people that had been given the seed, kind of thing. Yeah. It was so interesting. It sort of looked at us like we were flies or something, like a scientist, would say, oh, they just live for such a short period of time, kind of thing. And I did something, don't remember the entire thing because I was in a deep trance to do it, but I know it had to do with going into the cellular memory and something with love and being embedded and that, and she didn't have problems with it after that. But so strange to think about that these things are actually real. You know, it blew my mind as a novice reader because I was like, oh my God, I am cray now, you know, and I'm sure some of the things, I mean, you're lucky because you grew up in Mount Shasta, so at least talk of these things was known, but wow, you know, wow. So.
And people were scared. You know, it was,
I'm sure.
I was taught not to go near, the energy when it was strong. I was taught that, if you encountered one of these people to go get away from them, not to approach them. It was, it's just, I don't know if it's the fear of the unknown. I have no idea. With the Bermuda Triangle, I think that something like you were just saying got left on. Okay. And it's coming on and they're accidentally slipping into it. All right. Yeah. I think time works differently in different dimensions. That maybe what 100 years for us could be 1,000 years for them. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times they may not technically be that old. It's just that time works differently. Okay. And, because, there are time warps. I believe like those men on those ships and people who disappear off the ships, I think that, like you were just saying, that it wasn't the ship they wanted, it was the people, and the ship was the perfect trap.
Right. Well, they're confined. It's like easy pickings. You said that,
it really is.
You said that a lot of the beings that you encountered in these dimensional ships were not negative energies. But
no.
I know you had mentioned to me that you had an encounter with some dark angels. So tell us about those angels.
I mean, it's only because, that they're about 8 feet tall and they're made up of darkness so deep.
8 feet?
I mean,
8 feet tall?
You can,
yes.
8 feet tall. Now, they have very skinny arms, and what seems like a membrane between the bodies meeting at the elbow, or it's a very short cape, 1 to 2, okay? And they walk on two legs with very round heads. It reminded me of a pilot's helmet, okay? And they communicate with this high-pitched squeal accompanied by musical clicks, but it sounded mechanical to me, And but they're not used to being observed, because when I noticed them, they just will jump right back into the slip. And on vacation one year, I was in Arizona, and we were looking at Hopi petroglyphs, and I noticed a couple of them, the drawings reminded me of what I saw. Okay. And I went, well, that looks like what I saw. And so that's when I knew for sure that Hopi knew, at least if they couldn't open up other doors to dimensions, they knew of these other dimensions and of these particular beings.
Yeah. You had kind of one of those mind-bending experiences with a werewolf too. Tell us about that.
I know.
I talked about them in another show. I know it sounds crazy, but go ahead, talk to us.
But okay. So this is before the internet. This is before smartphones. So you're going back years. Okay. What validated it was coming across a family who encountered them and described exactly what I did. So that's how I knew. They had no idea who I was. And that's how I knew they saw that. It kind of went, oh, man, I'm not losing my mind. It really was real. I was hoping it was a dream kind of thing.
Where did you see it? And
well, I don't know what they want. Okay, now, these right here, it was a family who lived in the mountains, okay? And then one night, they look out and they see this lighthouse beam in the woods behind their house, okay? And it's shooting up into the sky from the ground. So the couple of men go out to check it out, and to their surprise, all right, they see these werewolf-type creatures, not just 1 or 2, but more like 12 or 15, okay? And they were hanging around the light, and that scared the crap out of them, okay? This went on for a few more nights. They wouldn't go back over to it. There was no way they were going near it again, but the light kept going on. And let me tell you about country folk. They know every animal on their land. They hunt all year round. Yes. There was no way that so many of these creatures were romping in their backyard and they didn't know it.
Oh, no.
They just appeared one night, So they never saw the light or the werewolves again. Of course, they sold their farm and moved soon after that. But when they were, describing this
Gotta
lighthouse
go
beam
now.
effect,
Yeah.
and the werewolf, I was like, because I only saw two. Okay,
Wow.
and let me tell you, scary creatures. All right, there's no doubt about it. It was an animal. This wasn't a. I don't know how they were able to even open this dimensional slip, because it really was an impression of an animal, but they did not want you messing around with them. They didn't want you anywhere near the light, and it was like, man, I backed off and said, it's all yours. Yeah. And that's what they didn't want me near them. Okay. Or near the light. So I imagine the family was the same way. But when you hear, the exact same story that you experienced, that you never wrote anywhere, you never told anybody about, that's validated what you saw was true, and they saw it too.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that they are drawn to the light, opposites attract kind of thing? Or what do you think they're doing with that?
They were deliberate. It was a door. It was a slip into a dimension. They knew exactly what they were doing.
A beam of light, like not a lighthouse beam.
Yeah, lighthouse beam, and it's a bluish white light. It's perfectly round. The weird part is it doesn't light up the area. Okay, all right. So whatever this lighthouse beam is, it's not like a lamp that you turn on. Okay, it is a straight beam, a few feet perfectly circled. And like I said, it same with them. It went through the trees like the trees wasn't there. Okay, and it didn't affect the light at all. I have an
experience just exactly like that. No, I don't know about the werewolves, but I know about the beam and how that was exactly how she described it.
There you go, and that's what it is you get people that are describing, because not everybody. There's only one other family that ever encountered a werewolf like I did. Okay, because that's just the best word to use, even though I don't think they were werewolves, but it was a great description.
Yeah.
But the lighthouse beam, I realized that they were seeing the same thing I was seeing, and these things it is deliberately being opened by them.
Yeah.
To me, how do you go from advanced being obviously advanced, to I would call a wild animal opening up the same thing.
That's so wild, because I'm trying to remember what she told me. She's an astrologer friend of mine. And I remember her saying they looked up in the sky, and it was at night, and there was a perfect circle that went through to blue sky behind it. And then there was this beam that came down, and I think someone was murdered during that time.
And it's like I said, I know when to back off. You know what I mean?
Oh,
when you feel an aggression from a bear or something, these were that. Okay, it wasn't. The dark angels were like, oh, we've been caught being seen, and they just dive back in. But I didn't feel aggression. Okay, this was definitely an animal. But what blew my mind was, I'm like, wow, these animals know how to open these up. How did they get that knowledge?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're able to use it. But to them, it was a ritual of some sort. Yeah. That's how they were, So I don't know why they would come here, and deliberately do it. And it went on for several nights, and then it just stops. And you just don't see it again. And you're like, okay, that's cool. But like I said, it's really amazing where you're thinking, I did not see what I saw.
Right.
Until you talk to somebody that had no idea what you saw, and they're describing the same thing. And you're like going, okay, that's kind of scary in a way.
Yeah, tell us about the potato chips.
Oh, these are my favorite, okay? It looks just like a potato chip. So imagine a potato chip, okay? About 3 feet in diameter, all right? And they're like dogs, okay? Because when I was curious, they didn't fly, but they hovered. That was just really, it was like they were hovering, all right? But they moved, And I was so curious that I approached one. It growled at me like a dog, and it did. It was like, "Arr." And I was like, ooh, okay, no problem, backing off. And it would be more than one, and they would approach me and get a few inches away from me, and like they were checking me out. And I just put off this good energy going, I won't hurt you, I promise, just
Right.
don't hurt me. And but that's what I called him because it looked just like a potato chip, all, around the edges and all.
Yeah.
But it was definitely alive, but it was an animal, but it was only aggressive when I approached him.
Huh.
Which is like a dog. If dog doesn't know you, growls at you and tells you to back off, and you back off, and then the dog's okay.
Right.
So that's what these things were like. And like I said, I have seen some weird stuff. I don't know what they are, so a lot of times I use in my memory what does it look like? Well, it looks like a potato chip.
Right.
What
to
does
try to
this
be
look
able
like?
to-
Well, it looks like a werewolf.
Well,
you're going,
adventurers
even though
to-
those are
I was going to say
but even though
adventurous
that's
to
not
new
what they
lands.
are, those are the
Uh-huh.
best descriptions you can come up with,
Yeah.
and you don't know what they are. But a lot of times, like I said, a lot of them they're just curious about me, but I think every one of them are shocked that I could see them.
Oh, definitely, because I
that-
don't think there are too many of us that can perceive them.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Oh,
and I'm
Gaylen.
sitting here going, I'm looking for spirits. I am not looking for something like you, and I wouldn't know, and I don't know how to say. I can't resolve that particular issue.
Right.
I don't know what they are.
Right.
I have no idea how to resolve your problem if it's in your house or on your property, because I have no idea how to resolve an issue. So when I come across something like that, it's like, oh no, what am I going to do? Because I don't know what to do.
Sure,
And there's
sure.
only been one place that I could not, that just kept opening up. This thing just, beam of light just kept showing up randomly over the months, and and I'm like, well, you're on your own. I'm sorry, but I can't, I can't even explain what this
Gaylen,
dimensional slip is.
We are at the end of our hour. If you want to reach Gaylen, it's afterlifegoeson.com. Thank you so much, for it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.